Hey everybody, it's Rykard here again, back with another black and white Pokemon analysis. Today, we're going to be discussing the shellless Pokemon known as Agirudaa. So let's get started by taking a look at its typing, abilities, and stats. So first off, this Pokemon is a mono bug type, which is actually pretty rare among fully evolved bug Pokemon, because generally they either have the poison or flying type attached to them when they're fully evolved, or in a lot of cases in this generation, steel as well. But it's pretty cool that this Pokemon retains its monotyping throughout all of its evolutions. As for its abilities, the first one it gets is known as Hydration, which is an ability that allows you to be cured of status conditions when when rain is on the field. And this can be a great ability to have if you're using this Pokemon on a rain dance team, because it'll prevent this Pokemon from being paralyzed or burned or toxic or anything like that, which is very beneficial in any situation. As for its next ability, it is known as Sticky Hold, which actually is a very cool and unique ability that not a lot of Pokemon get. And what it does is it prevents this Pokemon from losing its item by whatever means your opponent is trying to get rid of it. Meaning that if they try to use Trick on you, it won't work, or if they try and use Knockoff, it won't actually knock off the item, it'll just do damage. Which is really cool if you want this Pokemon to be able to obviously keep its item for as long as you need it to. Um, and then lastly, it gets the ability Unburden in the Dream World, which if you look at its speed stat is kind of unnecessary, but it would be pretty cool to use. And if you don't know what it does, basically it doubles your speed whenever the item you are holding is lost. So that would work with a berry or something like that that's activated when when you have low health or something like that. The berry will be consumed and then your speed will be doubled. But as I said before, it's kind of unnecessary with the ridiculous speed this Pokemon has. As for its stats, though, it has actually pretty good 80 HP, which you will see in the first set can be utilized very effectively for one reason only. But it's unfortunate that it only has 40 physical defense and 60 special defense to work with that, meaning that this Pokemon really won't be taking a lot of hits from your opponent very well, because they'll do quite a bit of damage, especially if they are physical. As for its physical attack, though, it's a decent 70, which is actually kind of usable to an extent, and this Pokemon does learn Curse, which could potentially boost that low attack up even higher, but unfortunately it doesn't learn that many physical moves to even make use of, so it's kind of a bummer. As for its special attack, though, it's at a very good 100, meaning that this Pokemon can probably do lots of damage on the special side, and unlike its physical counterpart, it does learn a lot of special moves to make use of. And lastly, its speed, which I mentioned before, is at a completely ridiculous 145 base stat, meaning that this Pokemon will essentially be outspeeding everything except for like Ninjask and Deoxys speed, I believe, or something like that. But like this Pokemon is ridiculously fast, and that will definitely prove to be incredibly useful and even game breaking in a sense, because you know that you'll be able to outspeed whatever the heck you're up against unless it's scarfed. So that's a really awesome trait of this Pokemon, and will probably be why this Pokemon will be used a lot. But as for that, let's get to a couple of sets for it. So this first set is going to be characteristic of what I think a lead Agirudaa could function as. So first we're going to give it a nature that increases its speed. It doesn't really matter which one you use, just as long as it's a plus speed nature. I suggested Jolly or Timid just because they don't sacrifice any of your defenses, which are fairly low. As for the ability, we're going to be using Sticky Hold, which will be a counter to potential trickers that might be used in this generation. I know that they were often used in the previous gen, so if your opponent wants to use Trick on the first turn it's out to get an advantage on your lead, Sticky Hold is a great ability to have, because it'll essentially make Trick completely useless, since you'll keep your item and they just wasted a turn. As for the EVs, we're going to put 252 into HP to give you your max HP possible, which will work in conjunction with the move Life Gamble, which I will get to in a moment. The 4 defense EVs are there just because, and then the 252 EVs are in speed to give you your max speed possible with a plus nature, which, if you're curious, is a stat of 427, which is ridiculously high. As for the item, we're going to be using a focus sash just so if we are hurt, we know we'll at least survive one attack from your opponent. As for the moves, we're just going to be basically using a bunch of support moves. So first, we could either utilize Protect or Taunt. Protect would be there so that you know what your opponent is going to do, and if they use a move that would set up, like Stealth Rocks or Spikes or something like that, you can obviously encore it with your next move in the list, which is Encore. And that'll essentially make them have to switch out, allowing you to set up more spikes on your side or on your opponent's side of the field, which will damage switch-ins. The other option is Taunt, so that you could obviously make it so your opponent can't even set up Stealth Rocks or anything of that sort at all, and thus completely cripple them in a lead situation, or at least to the point where they will not be able to put up any entry hazards or do whatever. And this Pokemon is ridiculously fast, so you can just bring it in later in the game if you want to just taunt some Pokemon that's setting up or is using a lot of recovery moves to stay alive, like a Blissey or something like that. But the first three moves just basically focus around setting up your own entry hazards while preventing your opponent from doing the same. As for its last move, it is a new move in this generation that I do not have all the details on, but basically it makes it so that whatever your HP is, that is the damage done to your opponent if you use Life Gamble. And basically you can think of this as a weird version of Explosion where it does damage equal to your own HP. So that's the reason for maxing out your HP, which, if you're curious, is 364. And in most cases, that'll be more than enough to take out other Pokemon on your opponent's side of the field that want, or that are generally like sweeping sets that have high speed and high attack. But since you're probably going to be faster than them, you could easily just completely get rid of the threat by using Life Gamble. But the thing is that you obviously KO yourself in the process of using it. The thing I'm not sure about, though, is if it works if your opponent has Focus Sash or the ability Sturdy, because I'm not entirely sure if it will KO. But I will find that out as soon as possible and put it in an annotation right as I'm talking right now to tell you what the conclusive answer is. But if it hits through Focus Sash or Sturdy, this Pokemon can essentially just be used to take out whatever the heck your opponent has as a lead, because you'll outspeed it, and chances are leads aren't running max HP unless they're like a screening set, like an Uxie or something like that. But it's just a really awesome move to start off the game by taking out whatever opponent or whatever Pokemon your opponent has on the field. And obviously, because of the support moves through Protect, Taunt, Encore, and Spikes, or whichever ones you use, you'll be able to obviously set up entry hazards at the same time and possibly see one of your opponent's other Pokemon by forcing a switch with Encore or Taunt. So it's a really useful set that could be very good as a lead. As for this next set, we're going to make use of Agiruda's high speed and high special attack. So we could either give it a timid or a modest nature. Either one works because of its ridiculously high speed to begin with, so in that case you might opt for a modest nature over a timid one just to have more special attack. As for the ability, we're going to be using Sticky Hold because that seems like the most generic ability to have on a set like this, because we're using Life Orb, so we're not using a berry that would be lost. And this isn't really for a Rain Dance team, but if it was, you can opt for Hydration in that case. As for the EVs, 4 for HP, 252 to special attack to max that out, and 252 for speed to max that out. As for the item, we're going to be using a Life Orb to obviously do as much damage as possible, even though we will be losing a little bit of our health every time we use it. As for the moves, first one is obvious. It's going to be your main stab move with Bug Buzz, so it'll be doing quite a bit of damage to anything that doesn't resist it, and it will obviously get stab, so it'll be at 120 base power, because normally it's 80, I believe. So this Pokemon can do a lot of damage with just that one move. As for the next, we're going to be using Focus Blast just to give you more type coverage, because fighting is a very, very effective attacking type, seeing as a lot of Pokemon are weak to it, and it's not really resisted by a lot of different things. Usually it's a ghost Pokemon that is switched in on a fighting type move. As for the next move, we're going to be using Giga Drain, and this is used to keep your HP up because of a Life Orb taking it away, and also this Pokemon's low defenses. So Giga Drain can be a great way to first have a powerful grass type move to use, and also as a way of recovering health. Now this Pokemon does learn Recover, but seeing as you can have a really powerful grass type move in place of that essentially does a similar job, I opted for Giga Drain over that. As for its last move, you could either use, or I would either suggest using Acid Bomb or some kind of hidden power. I'm not sure which one at this point. But the reason why you would use Acid Bomb is because it basically drops your opponent's special defense by 2 stages every time it's used, I believe. So it's kind of like a poor man's Seed Flare, because it doesn't have high base power, but you can use it because of the drop you get from it. And I don't think there is any Pokemon out there that would like to take any attack that this Pokemon has when they're -2 special defense. So it can be a very good way of scaring off your opponent, or just being a way to make you even more powerful on the special side. But either of those options would work equally well depending on what you want to accomplish with this set. As for this last set, it is going to be kind of a utility Agirudaa that can function in a variety of ways. So first we're going to give it a Jolly Nature to increase its speed but decrease its special attack, and again we're going to be using the ability Sticky Hold. As for the EVs, this time we're going to try and be a little bit more defensive. So we're going to put 128 into HP to raise that stat, and then 128 into your physical defense, because in all actuality your physical defense is really bad. So having that, or those EVs in there, will kind of help you out a little bit in that area. As for the speed, again we're going to be maxing it out just because this Pokemon should always max its speed out in both cases, just because of how high it is and how useful that'll be. For the item though, this time we're going to be using Leftovers because we want this Pokemon to survive and be able to do whatever it needs to for as long as possible. The first move in the set is going to be Me First, mainly for the fact that you will generally always be first, and it can be a great way to use your opponent's attack against them, since this Pokemon isn't going to be putting a lot of EVs, or isn't putting any EVs for that matter, into any of its attacking stats. So Me First works well as a way of damaging your opponent without actually having to use any of your own moves to do so. As for the next, we're going to be using U-Turn as a way to scout out Pokemon and also deal physical bug damage, which really isn't a lot in this case, but it still could be enough to give you some kind of advantage on your opponent by taking a little bit of its HP out and then switching into something more useful to take on your opponent. And obviously if you predict a switch, then U-Turn is a great move to use as well, so you can see what they switch into and switch into a counter yourself. As for the next move, we're going to be using Toxic just because this Pokemon can use it. It'll just be a great way of spreading status to your opponent and wear them down slowly. Lastly, we're going to be using Recover because this Pokemon learns that, and it'll allow it to stay alive for a while and possibly stall out Toxic on your opponent if necessary. And that's just a great asset to have. Also, this Pokemon will be taking increased damage from Stealth Rocks, so having Recover will be useful in the sense that you'll be able to rid yourself of that damage immediately just by using it. But that is about it for this Pokemon. As you can see, it's really unique and can do a lot of different things, and it has an awesome looking design. It looks like a ninja to me. But I only thought of probably some of the possibilities that this Pokemon can make use of. So let me know what you guys think, and I will see you in the next video. So take care, and goodbye.